Hello, thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to start the reading of The Children of the Loft One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis. This book is by John Peniel. Thank you for listening to me read, and I ask that if you have not subscribed, please take the time to subscribe, and everybody can push that like button. So, let's get started. The Foreword. Reality. This book chronicles the author's personal experiences and presents ancient spiritual teachings and philosophy. In order to make it as interesting and readable as possible, much of it is presented in a story and dialogue style, based upon the author's experiences. Conversations with monks, teachers, and students were reconstructed from records and the author's memories. Thus, while not perfect transcriptions, the dialogue does accurately reflect actual conversations. Hopefully, the book will be more than just interesting. For those with an open mind and heart, it will also give reason to ponder the nature of life, the universe, your beliefs, and the potentials that exist within your own personal life. This book isn't about Atlantis or proving its existence, besides the fact that many things about the nature of the universe, creation, God, and ancient history are impossible or nearly impossible to prove at this time in human development. The sole purpose of this book is to convey something far more important: ancient spiritual teachings that can change your life and indirectly improve the world. We believe that it's best for everyone to attain direct personal experience of God and discover the true nature of the universe and creation for themselves, rather than taking anyone's word for it or believe in what they are told or read, including this book and our teachings. Thus, even though we do necessarily discuss some unprovable ancient history concepts, the teachings provide the means for achieving that direct experience and direct knowing yourself. By reading the conversations and thoughts of the author as he is learning this himself, you too can discover a return path to the universal spirit / God and inner peace. We aren't trying to convince anyone of anything or asking anyone to accept anything in this book on faith. We are simply presenting ideas. We leave it up to you to think about the principles and the teachings presented and decide for yourself whether or not they are a good thing for you, for others, and for the world. Within all of us is a lie detector, a silent inner voice that offers us the greatest potential to discern truth and reality. People have fooled experts with so-called physical proof, but the inner voice is never fooled. The inner voice could also sometimes be termed as a gut feeling, intuition, or woman's intuition, but it can also be much more than that. You may not be very in touch with it at this time, but you can be if you want to. This inner voice is a part of God within you that knows what is true and what isn't, if you will just hear it. It doesn't talk. It is just a knowingness. The only reason behind people not hearing their inner voice are fear, desire, and selfishness. If you can transcend those things even for a moment, you will have the most reliable source of discernment that exists. Even when all external appearances of truth say one thing and your inner voice says another, you can bet that your inner voice is right. Note: earlier editions of this book referred to an elder monk named Ra. This was not the person connected with the channeled Ra materials. Our order, the Children of the Law of One, the author, and this book are not in any way connected to or related to the Ra material, which is now also being called the Law of One material, or a person using the name Ra who says he is a Law of One teacher. We don't wish to imply anything bad about this person or the material, but we needed to clarify the situation because some people have thought we were associated. Humor? Seriously? Humor is a very esoteric thing in a way, and most people don't really understand it. Ancient teachings refer to it as the great neutralizer. Most never stop to think why human beings laugh. For one thing, they need to laugh. In our lives, laughing can neutralize or minimize the devastating effects of pain and suffering, both our own or that of others. If you stop and think about it, the next time you see a comedy show, you'll find that most comedy is based on other people's misfortunes. From minor mishaps, embarrassments, and humiliation to major screw-ups in life, and sometimes even physical injuries, like someone falling down a flight of stairs or off a roof. All human beings, whether they are sinners or saints, need to laugh to maintain their saintly and health. Laughing can even heal. Thus, truly spiritual people, as opposed to those who put on an air of seriousness in order to give the appearance of being spiritual, have a great sense of humor. They certainly take their work very seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. Also, because of their work, they need to laugh and be humorous even more than most of us because they are dealing with more pain and suffering than most of us. The author of this book is no exception, and the book reflects this. Unfortunately, most seekers are very serious. It's only natural. The ancient teachings presented here are very serious also, but that doesn't mean you can't have a little fun. And if you don't take yourself too seriously, you'll be able to enjoy humor where you may find it and perhaps lighten your own load just a bit. Rules of writing. The author knew an English professor who taught English, vocabulary at a university in California. The professor once told him that he taught his students to feel free to invent new words. If there wasn't something already just right for what they wanted to communicate. That's how language expands and gives people the ability to more accurately convey their message to others. Subtleties of meaning also require, subtles of meaning often require new words to communicate them properly. The author believes the same concept applies to the use of grammar and spelling. Rules of any kind shouldn't hamper the style or content of any communication, and if they do, we must make up new rules. While writing has certain grammatical rules that aren't meant to govern it, it is also an art. And if the impact or message can be enhanced by breaking these rules, they should be broken. Using fine art as an example, Van Gogh was criticized and rejected because he didn't follow the proper rules or styles of painting. Yet most people now recognize that he conveyed feelings and sometimes a message that could have only been done by ignoring the rules and expressing himself freely. The author of this book has approached his writing in a similar manner. He has deliberately ignored convention in favor of communicating with the reader in a way he feels is most effective. Much of this is because he wanted the writing to reflect speaking to you. This creates a more intimate communication and also more accurately represents the thoughtful deliberateness of speech that is characteristic of many teachers. Thus, in this book, you will find odd word/phrases/sentences, odd grammar and punctuation, and odd usage of all the above. It's not because the author is illiterate or due to lack of professional editing. Some of the differences include, but are not limited to, extra commas. For instance, they may have been deliberately inserted to reflect and enhance pause. Hyphenated or strangely spelled words to make something stand out, get you to think or make a connection to another thought. And chronologically, that doesn't follow a linear timeline in order to properly present the teachings. These aren't extreme differences, and the author believes it actually helps some readers transcend the limitations of left brain thinking just a bit, and makes the book even easier and more enjoyable to read. Survivors of Atlantis. Stories of Atlantis. Why do they exist and where do they come from? Why are they so persistent? And why is the subject of Atlantis so fascinating to so many people? Many scholars now cite archaeological evidence of ancient civilizations that were destroyed by a great catastrophe, which they believe could be the source of the stories. But that raises even more intriguing questions. If Atlantis was once a great civilization, who were the Atlantean people and what were they like? Within the recorded history of many cultures, there are references to the great island continent of Atlantis and its highly sophisticated civilization. Some people dismiss this as myth. Many of the cultures had no known contact or knowledge of each other's civilizations. So why would such diverse ancient peoples such as the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Hopis, or the Greeks have the same legends? Plato, a highly respected Greek philosopher and teacher, gives a detailed non-fiction account of Atlantis. Due to that and other factors, many scientists no longer argue about the existence of Atlantis, just the whereabouts. Even marine scientist and explorer Jacques Cousteau searched for underwater archaeological evidence of Atlantis. It ended with his son believing Atlantis was probably in the Caribbean or Atlantic, and Jacques believing it was in the Mediterranean, even though they both found what they believed to be evidence of an ancient sunken civilization. Neither had definite proof that they discovered the remains of Atlantis. However, little absolute archaeological proof is likely to even remain from any civilization destroyed by a cataclysmic disaster, let alone tens of thousands of years ago, let alone one sunken beneath the sea in a totally unknown area. Even the Great Titanic was only recently found, and only after extensive searches, even though scientists knew approximately where it sank. Furthermore, it went down only decades ago. and it sunk from merely hitting an iceberg, whereas Atlantis allegedly sunk long, long ago in an unknown location and was totally devastated by unimaginable natural catastrophe. A disaster so great that it may have had a ripple effect around the world, which brings us to the legends of the Great Flood. Cultures the world over who don't have a specific legend of Atlantis still have stories of a great flood that destroyed most life, which happened to be very similar to the story of the sinking and flooding of Atlantis. Descriptions of the destruction of Atlantis say it involved great earthquakes and volcanic upheavals and the actual sinking of the entire land mass. So perhaps the legends of a great flood could have come from secondary flooding that resulted from unimaginably gigantic tsunami waves generated by an event that was the greatest geological disaster in history, like the one most scientists say caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. Such waves could have swept the globe, flooding many, if not most parts of the world. And eruptions could have darkened the sky and created other disastrous ecological consequences. The various cultural stories of the Great Flood often tell of refugees who managed to escape the great disaster. Some legends, like those of the Hopi tribe, describe the Hopi as such refugees. They depict the Hopi escaping the calamity and coming to their new land on giant flying tortoise shells. It is said that once they arrived, they were led to safety from an environment gone mad by a bird-headed kachina who guided them to underground passages. To the open mind who researches this subject, the evidence that Atlantis did indeed exist is overwhelming. But if Atlantis, as Plato described it, was a highly advanced, sophisticated civilization with technology that even surpasses that which we have now, shouldn't there be some other remnant of their society? Not necessarily, but just perhaps. According to the legends, Atlantis was so thoroughly destroyed by natural catastrophe that there was nothing left. Yet, couldn't there have been some Atlanteans with enough foresight to leave beforehand and escape the disaster? Or some that were traveling in other parts of the world at the time? It seems quite possible that, given the stories of how advanced and sophisticated a civilization it was, that at least some traders or travelers were elsewhere in the world at the time. Some theories say the mythological inhabitants of Mount Olympus, the gods of the Greek and Roman mythology, were actually Atlanteans that survived. Now, just consider this amazing possibility. What if groups of Atlanteans not only survived, but established communities in various places? What if they continued to pass on their heritage, their history, philosophy, and religion even to this day? Such people could teach us so much and fill us in on this great missing piece of human history. That is where this book comes in. It was written by a priest whose order traces their lineage from Atlantis to Egypt in the days of the construction of the Sphinx and Great Pyramid. Oddly enough, this book isn't about Atlantis. It covers some little known ancient history, but only as necessary background. Instead, the book focuses on the philosophy and spiritual practices that originated there. Atlantis is just ancient history now, but the teachings of their spiritual tradition are all still available, are still invaluable in the present. Most importantly, though, the author brings an urgent message, and rather than a new age philosophy about life, he presents old age ways to live by that can really change your life and world. Fortunately, it's all presented in a fascinating format in which the reader gets to discover everything themselves through the eyes and experiences of a young North American. We get to be with him during his 3 years at a monastery, share his personal trials, and see his changes. We also get to experience some of his amazing encounters after returning to the real world as an enlightened teacher and head of the order. Besides presenting the author's experiences and simple teachings about how to find your own enlightenment, the book has another message for the world. He points out similarities between the present state of affairs in the world and the last days of Atlantis. What if we have come full circle in a historical cycle? You may have heard the saying, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. The author tells us that our future depends on the choices we make and on what we have learned from our past. If that is true, the story of Atlantis may well be the most important history lesson of all time. But other than filling in a possible vital part of human history, the book gives us something perhaps even more important. It presents us with a beautiful spiritual philosophy that guides us towards a better life through personal growth. The wisdom and teachings it imparts are wonderful, fascinating, and also very useful when applied to our everyday lives. That was the foreword of The Children of the Loft One and the Lost Teachings of Atlantis by John Peniel. Thank you for listening. Thank you for forgiving the hesitations and the little mispronunciations here and there. I do try to speak with accuracy and pronunciation, correct pronunciation. So through it all, I promise you will enjoy this fabulous book. So until the next time, have the most benevolent day.